Hello and welcome to this crossover episode of PandaVision and the Star Wars Universe podcast. Today we are talking about The Mandalorian. The new season's coming out pretty soon, and so we're doing a review. We're talking about Season 1. We're talking about all the things we loved. We're talking about the characters and where they wound up, what our theories are, and everything we're looking forward to about Season 2. All that and more when myself, Ashley Coffin, and Paul Happy join in. Right after this commercial break, we have no control over. Welcome back to PandaVision. This is Matthew. This is the place where we talk about all the geeky media we love that generally doesn't have its own universe. Of course, Star Wars does, but here we're talking about it just because so many folks are so excited about Mandalorian Season 2 that's coming out. My name is Matthew. I'm, among other things, the host of the Star Wars Universe podcast, and we're going to be talking about every episode of that new season when it comes out on that podcast ourselves. So we're putting this out to kind of, get folks excited. Probably you're getting really hyped up, getting ready for the new season. Maybe you've forgotten some details. You wanted to do a quick review. Get ready. Hopefully you also join us for our episode-by-episode cast on Star Wars. But even if not, this is a great way to help bring you back into the conversation, get you ready for Season 2. Two quick things I want to just say about that. One, as I said, we will be doing every episode on the Star Wars Universe podcast. We are also going to be doing a live watch party for every episode. So the new episodes are going to be dropping on Fridays, starting with this Friday, and every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 Eastern, all the rest of it, we're going to be doing a watch party where you can sign on, watch the episode live with us, and chat along with us. Ask questions, get thoughts, debate theories, everything as we watch the episode together. That'll be with myself, very often with Ashley or Paul, or other people who can join, and quite a lot of other folks from here at the Stranded Panda Network. So please check out both of those things. And now let's jump right into this conversation. As I said, joining me are Ashley and Paul. How are you guys doing tonight? How you feeling about the new season coming out?
Hey, everybody. Happy to be back.
Awesome. Ashley, good to have you here with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here too. This is Paul.
Ashley's voice needs no explanation.
I'm looking forward to seeing some new episodes.
I know. New content. I don't care what it is, as long as it's new.
It has just been so. With all the pandemic stuff, I know we've been all kind of talking about scraping the bottom of the barrel a little bit to find things to talk about, and the fact that we have 8 new episodes coming out is just super exciting to me.
And I like that it's once a week, because if not, it'd be done. And then, as Ken likes to say, it's like, we really have to rewatch them again before you do a podcast. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, every now and then my partner Mary has to be like, can we watch something that you're not going to record about just to watch it?
That's funny. I've definitely felt some burden of trying to watch a whole bunch of stuff because we were going to do this, and I was like, I'll rewatch Season 1, and then I started watching The Queen's Gambit when it came out, and 7 hours later I was done watching it, but but I could have watched Mandalorian Season 1 again in that time.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I watched that horrible Emily in Paris for no reason whatsoever on Saturday. I watched all of them, and I was just like, what did I just do with my life? Just so like a couple times I could be like, oh, I was there. Oh, I sat there. Well, I was like, that show was bad.
The thing, unfortunately, that keeps happening, and Paul has been one of the worst culprits in this, though I'm pretty bad too, is
calling you
either
out.
he or I will suggest that we watch something together, or just that we both watch something and talk about it, or that like one of us is watching it and you want to check it out. And it's always like, oh no, this is totally outside of genre. This is just something you're going to like. And then later we wind up podcasting about it.
Yeah.
But today we are talking about an established universe. We're talking about the Star Wars universe. And what's really been, I think, for many folks, one of the best new things to come out from Star Wars in quite a while. So let me just start there. What did you guys like so much about Mandalorian Season 1? What really drew you in?
Everything.
Awesome.
Like, Ken he doesn't hate, but he's not big into Star Wars, and neither is like Matthew Carroll. But right. I know a lot of people who aren't into Star Wars are now into Star Wars because of this show. I think it was just what they did with usually doing a show with a different director for each episode doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
usually that happens when like shows are failing, like i.e. Twin Peaks or other stuff. But this really worked. They were all able to bring this like really good story together while each episode did kind of feel different.
Well, and it's funny because I'll admit I didn't know it was all different directors because you're right, it did feel different, but with the most recent movies, if nothing else, we really got a taste of the bad things that can happen when different directors direct different movies or different episodes, and there isn't a coherent narrative and a coherent feel. And I definitely felt like you're right, like each episode was a little bit different, but there did feel like there was a through line. It didn't feel like just random and off the wall. I mean, even compared to something like Lovecraft, which I loved, but did feel very disjointed in a lot of ways. This did feel like a very cohesive story where it was always kind of the same feel, even if, as you said, it was different directors.
Yeah. It's like that they all got together and had, round tables to be like, this is my episode, this is how we're going to make it work. Like, they really worked it out together to make it, I would almost say, perfect.
Yeah. I do think it was a very, very good show. Paul, what about yourself? What got you into it?
Well, so... Yeah, I mean, I probably didn't like it quite as much. Certainly not on the second time. The first time, though, I think something I really like about it is the pacing, the lack of dialogue. I'm a fan of, a stoic character in a helmet, which apparently so is Jon Favreau. There's obviously like a lot of kind of Iron Man similarities, right? But... also, a lot of my favorite characters are like retired assassins.
That's cool.
Like Bourne in The Long Kiss Goodnight, Wesley in The Princess Bride. I mean, I could go on and on.
Gross Point Blank. Yeah.
Gross Point Blank. Yeah, no, it's a long list.
Bill Burr.
Like, Bucky's like the Winter Soldier is like my favorite character in the MCU. I don't know why, it just is. Also because then whenever I go out in a mask and sunglasses, I like. Sort of in my head, I picture Bucky, even though I right now don't really look much like him.
I like it.
Just put on a fierce smoke eye, you'll be fine.
Right, exactly. I think the shorter episodes was a really good choice, given kind of how much the series relies on timing and sort of this pressure that doesn't come from like necessarily like really huge stakes.
Yeah. Right?
It's like a lot of the episodes I think feel kind of small, but not in a bad way. There's like episode 5 really I wasn't a fan of. I just think like Ming-Na Wen was like super wasted in it. But
yeah, that's definitely true.
But we talked about this when we were talking about Return of the Jedi also, like the amount that someone can convey with like a tilt of the head or, being able to really successfully execute on communicating emotion and thought while like in a metal suit, basically. I find very compelling. And I think there's sort of a universality to it. When I love great dialogue, right? But I hate terrible dialogue. And the less dialogue you have, the less likely you are to have like, some really bad dialogue. And so when you're able to say so much without really saying words, I just find that very powerful. And I think The Mandalorian does an amazing job of it. Also, Baby Yoda's just like the cutest thing ever.
Oh, I can't even handle him. I just want to squeeze his little face.
Well, but I think that to me it all ties together, and you're right. There's something amazing about a show that is completely carried. Like the two primary characters, the only ones I think who appear in every single episode, are a man who literally never shows you his face except for 10 seconds in the last episode.
Yeah.
And a puppet that never says a word the entire show. Like,
right.
The cutest arm puppet this side of the galaxy.
Oh my god, adorable.
He's like, meh.
Yeah.
We were commenting during the view of Return of the Jedi that a movie in which Baby Yoda and the Ewoks meet up would just be diabetically levels of sweet.
It would.
But I think that's and I want to get to actually that, and I think how well that character was balanced. But I mean, tell me if you guys disagree. I feel like that Mando and the child had a complicated, nuanced relationship that developed and grew over these 8 episodes. And like,
Yes.
I feel like at different points in time, I knew how they related to each other. And when you realize that they like, he talked to the child could coo and make faces, and it was a puppet. Like, it was so...
Right.
It is
But
amazing to me how much they developed that relationship so well.
Yeah, me too. It's a really fancy puppet, though, I think.
Also
Like,
true.
it's
Also true.
I'm pretty sure
not like
that's
a $5
real.
puppet.
That's just some real
Right.
little Yoda thing. They just didn't tell us.
Right.
They're
The
real.
puppet story is a cover.
Yeah. The alien invasion has actually begun.
Exactly.
This is just too cute.
Well, and that's the other thing I was going to say about the baby Yoda is that, which granted it's the child, we don't know if it's a Yoda.
Yeah, but
It's Baby Yoda.
It's
It's
baby
okay.
Yoda. It's always baby Yoda. But I when I watch it, there's a part of me that realizes like this is cloyingly sweet levels of adorableness.
Mhm.
And I think if it was in almost any other show or movie, it might be way too much.
right.
And on the flip side, The Mandalorian is at times very dark and very grim.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like
at times.
yeah.
Most of the time.
I feel like the two really need each other. You know, like I think the show
Yeah.
without this one incredible, hopeful, beautiful, adorable character would be really bad. And putting that character in anything that wasn't quite so dark and cynical would just feel like 100% audience manipulation.
I like how he can turn into a little murder machine when he wants to.
Right?
He
Right, like-
choked the shit out of Kara.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's adorable, but deadly, right?
Yeah.
Like not also 50, so probably older than the Mandalorian, right? But
Yeah.
I do think that juxtaposition. I wouldn't go so far as to say that like without the one, the other would like necessarily be bad. I'd have to see it, but
Yeah, of course.
I do think that the juxtaposition it's kind of what makes the show really special and unique.
Yeah. And I think what you said about stakes is also important. I know we've talked before about how it can just be exhausting when every TV show, every movie is about saving the world.
Mm-hmm.
But also that the stakes have to be big enough that you care. And I rewatched the series mostly in the last 2 days. And one thing I was noticing is that there's this wonderful balance because most of the time it is this very small story. The child is adorable, but if it's killed, you don't think the world's going to end. And the Mandalorian is like a good guy. We root for him, and we're sad that Queel dies. But the stakes are not that big. But at the same time, like, we know that the child is very powerful, and we know that the Empire wants it for some dark, mysterious purpose. And so it always feels like there's this like potential much bigger stakes waiting out in the background that we don't yet know anything about. And to me that's almost kind of perfect because it gives just a little bit more menace and just a little bit more of maybe if things all go wrong, this could be really bad for ways that are much worse than we know. But we're still mostly focused on these smaller stakes.
It makes me think about that scene. What was that guy that they met up with? Toro?
The bounty hunter?
Yeah, the young one who's like, I
Toro.
want to be like you. When he murdered the crap out of that girl, God, the name's Shen?
I think it's
Was it Shane?
I mean she's
Fennec.
she's played by the
Shut
woman
up.
from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's
Yeah.
all, I'll think of her. Ming-Wen
Well, it's
Chen.
like,
Mingo.
who was that mysterious person that walked up to her body that they never went back and told us
Yeah.
about? So there's all those little things that's showing you exactly what you just said, I think.
Yeah, there's so much else still going on, and frankly, I think this really did a great job of world building. Anytime we're talking about something in an extended universe, that's always one of the big questions, and I feel like this told me so much about what happened to the world after the Empire was destroyed, what's happening on these different planets. I just referenced Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it feels very much like that of, let's lower the focus of the camera, let's show you what's happening to the people who aren't Jedi, who aren't, generals. They're just kind of workaday people getting through their lives and how this is all affecting them.
Yeah, it definitely gives a feel for that. I would say I still don't have a clear idea of like what's really going on in the world like overall.
Right.
It's like, okay, there's a new republic. They're like doing some stuff, and then there's the remnants of the Empire, and they're doing some other stuff, and like it shows us kind of the people who aren't mostly in those two groups, like the people who aren't maybe some of the outer systems. I've never quite gotten like the geography or the astronomy of Star Wars, all that. I'm not sure if that, like, I feel like there should be maps, right? But they'd be complicated because they'd be like 3-dimensional. I don't know. Although
I need
apparently,
like a Tony Stark one.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. That you can, I want that.
They've created maps for various games, and my understanding is that they are all pretty standard to each other. But yeah, it definitely is kind of confusing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they talk about the core systems or something, I think, right? But like, but yeah, I mean, they show a lot of the planets seem sort of like the sort of more backwater type planets.
Right.
And although, I mean, you think about it, and it's like each planet ostensibly could be as complex as the Earth in terms of like civilizations, and it seems like a lot of places, this is sort of a broader critique of space shows in general, is like people go to they go somewhere and it's like that's the one place that exists on that planet, or sometimes there's like a second place they go to on the planet,
right?
And it's like, well, you could probably spend a lot more time on a given planet. And, I wonder whether they'll do that going forward. Like, it seems like there was, like, basically the one village on the planet where, what's his name? Is it Grief?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Navarro, is that planet.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and similarly...
I thought that was the name.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, of a person?
And similarly, when they go to the planet where... the Seven Samurai episode happens, which is something else we'll talk about 'cause it's such a brilliant reference. But yeah, basically there's a big town and a small town. Yeah. And that's about all right.
I was happy that we got to go to Tatooine to fix the Razor Crest. I was like, fan service, yes. I know where that place is.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, Tatooine seems to be the one place that they're actually now really starting to develop, because we've now gone back to a couple different parts of it at different times. But yeah, Star Wars has always had this idea of places that are fairly monochromatic, both in terms of their culture and literally their environment. There's a desert planet, there's a frost planet, there's a forest moon, there's all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So what were some of your favorite episodes?
My favorite one was the one with Bill Burr. I loved everything about that, like, heist one where he, they trap him and then he traps them. Like, Bill Burr's, like, my favorite comedian, so I was super happy to see him in there doing a good job. And, like, just him, like, pushing over Baby Yoda and, like, the entire internet losing their mind on him. It doesn't have to do with the episode, but I loved it. I really liked that episode.
Which one was Bill Burr playing?
He is, guy.
Mayfield?
That's it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, Mayfeld.
Yeah, and I just loved it. I thought that was another wonderful episode. It was very well crafted. It all fit well together, and it had the guy who plays Bobby Elvis from Sons of Anarchy as the big Uber boss, and he was just one of my favorite.
Well, didn't that remind you of the Firefly episode? Like, I loved it.
Oh yeah, very much. A lot of different episodes felt very similar to Thing. That was the one episode that felt like it had nothing to do with a Western. It was 100% Firefly. Which is a space Western. So
thank you.
But
nothing to do with, like, it wasn't like an adaptation of a Western. It was an adaptation of a space adaptation of Westerns.
Yeah.
So it was a little more meta.
In some ways, I feel like that episode perfectly captures one thing I think this show did really well, which is that it keeps you so involved that you don't get terribly distracted by the ridiculous plot holes.
Right,
Because, like, when I rewatch that episode and I'm realizing, okay, so the New Republic has a system that if a ship sends off a sign that says we're in trouble, they're just going to immediately, no questions asked, blow up that ship.
Oh my, yeah,
But if the beacon moves to somewhere else, they'll just move to no questions asked, blow up that place too.
It's like, this seems like a terrible policy. And tell me again how you're better than the Empire.
And, like, if that was meant to show us the New Republic actually isn't that much better than the Empire, and that's the point, that'd be interesting.
Right.
But that's not what they went for.
No,
Right?
it was just like, they got blown up. See,
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
But it's like the first time I watched that, I barely noticed it. You know, I think I was like, oh yeah, but who cares? This is so much fun.
yeah.
And that's another actually hanging thread of plot is we did have those three characters just sitting in the brig at the end. He didn't kill them, and
Right.
so that's
so
clearly
they
something
could-
to come back.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have a favorite episode?
Yeah, it might have been episode 4, like the Seven Samurai episode.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the last couple episodes as well a lot. I like that. What's his face? I don't remember all the names right immediately.
Moff Gideon.
No, Queel.
Queel,
Is
Queel,
it
yeah.
Queel.
I like that he like reprograms IG-11
Mm-hmm.
to be like something different, you know.
The nurse nurse droid.
Right, exactly. Like, I think, it really kind of, I don't know. I mean, it shows how, the character or function of a droid, can depend on who programs them, but it also kind of points to, like, the idea of how teachers and parents can influence the outcomes of their children, and, how people, not that people don't have, free will to, like, make their own decisions, but how people become who they are has a lot to do with what their experience is, and just, the influence, I mean, it's also like a redemption arc,
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's a redemption arc for both of them in some ways because, just on the teaching point, which I hadn't thought of, but I think is so true, and it's so relevant because this is all about how, Mando was found. He was raised as a Mandalorian, and the effect that those teachers have had on him, and that he's now sort of that for Baby Yoda. But also just, I mean, all season long we had not really his flaw, but like one of the things he was really wrestling with was his just intent, hatred and distrust of droids.
Right.
And, again, like hitting you with the emotion, the sacrifice of this, completely animated, but very well voice acted droid, that literally doesn't have a face in any way. Like I have no idea where its eyes are. It was a really touching, like, it got kind of someone was cutting onions in the room affecting scene. I think in large part because you could see how much it affected Mando. And honestly, that's the moment where I feel like you most see his character acting, because I was struck so much by, without saying a word, you really see Mando wrestling and accepting that maybe his prejudice is a little wrong and that this is a beautiful thing. And I was like, wait, but I never saw his face. How did I get all that? But it's just, it's just the body language and the expression.
The head tilts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
IG had
context as well.
His Terminator 2.
Yeah.
ending.
Right. Yeah, it's T2 moment.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Although I will just footnote that by like, kind of, maybe my biggest gripe with the show is that it's like, they're horrible to animals, they're horrible to droids. It has that, redemption at the end, but the redemption comes at the cost of, IG-11's existence.
Right.
And, so the sort of like, whose lives matter and like, what do we consider people or whatever. I think that's like a big question that's, this whole Star Wars universe has always sort of grappled with a little. Like from the very first movie, right? Oh, we don't serve droids in here, right?
Yeah.
Or their kind or whatever. And I feel like it doesn't totally take like a position on it all the time. And I don't know. One of the things that bothered me most in episode 5 was kind of that they just like, throw away these two characters and I don't know.
Which
like,
two characters in episode 5?
Well, Fennec and Toro and
Oh, right, with the gunslinger one.
Yeah, the gunslinger one. And, it's a series where, like, spoiler alert, a lot of people die, right? so
Spoiler alert on the recap episode.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But, like, sometimes like the choice of who lives and who dies, I think, bears a little bit of thought. Like, which characters are living, which characters are dying, what sort of, aspects of identity or whatever do they have. And I don't know. I feel like there's some stuff there, but I won't get too deep into it.
No, I think that's really interesting. Like, I definitely saw that, but I didn't like pay as much attention to it, and I feel like I will this season now.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. First of all, I'd say, it's the old comic book rule. Like, really, unless you see the head cut off, you don't 100% sure know they're dead.
Yeah, for sure.
And we saw Fennec, like, on the ground, basically dead.
Right.
But then we see it, as Ashley pointed out, that person going up to them. So maybe, like, they're in a Bacta tank somewhere now. Who knows? Maybe that person just, like, stealing their stuff. We don't know.
Right. We really don't know what's going on.
They looked a little too... They were dressed too nice to look like your average thief.
Yeah. To me, though, there's two other things there. One is that I will say, for me, I think because of that, I'm going to really want to see how does Mando's attitude towards droids in Season 2 change. And if he really has had some kind of a change of heart. And, I mean, one thing I'll say that the show did so well is it did what no other part of Star Wars ever could. It made battle droids look terrifying. Like, when I realized that the battle droids that he's fighting, or he's remembering in his memories, are the same things that were just laughably stupid in the Clone Wars and the Clone War movies. Like, it's like, oh my god.
It's the dialogue that they gave him.
Yeah.
It made them stupid.
They never say Roger or any of that nonsense.
Right. Plus, like, in the Clone Wars and, Revenge of the Sith and whatever, like, they're just getting cut through by Jedi like they're butter, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you're not, like, an army of Jedi, like, maybe the battle droids are scarier.
Yeah, I think that's very true. The other thing I was going to say, though, I mean, I think you're totally right about droids and animals and the way they're treated. What's funny, though, is that to me in that same episode, Episode 5, they really advanced something that I'd never seen done before, and I was very impressed by, and I was thinking about it because I just read about this in a book as well, a book called Kenobi, which is the way they deal with the Sand People. Because, in the original movies, they didn't have this consciousness, and I understand it, but, like, there's an easy way to see the Sand People as, basically an indigenous population that seems barbaric and strange to the colonizer settlers, and so is, like, fought with. That might sound familiar to some of our listeners.
Right.
And so the fact...
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. and so the fact... And it's interesting because this novel, Kenobi, is all about, like, Ben's early years on Tatooine watching over the baby Luke, and it really gets deep into, like, the inner workings of the Sand People and like, their perspectives on things, very much from this, like, colonizer, indigenous frame. And so having that scene where the Mandalorian is basically, like, telling the other bounty hunter, like, no, like, these are, we have to respect their customs, and we're crossing their land, and I'm going to communicate with them because there are other sentient beings worthy of that respect, and we got to give them stuff because we're respecting their land. And that was such a departure from how the Sand People had ever been shown that I really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, in the first one, it's like, oh, they're gonna, they're here. I'm gonna, like, decapitate them with my lightsaber, or probably cut off their hands. I don't remember exactly.
No.
We're going to talk about kind of the journeys of the characters, and I think the Mandalorian obviously is kind of like the biggest one. We've talked about his experience with the droids. What else do you think is really notable about his kind of where he starts the season and where he ends?
I just feel like, when it starts out, he's, like, at odds with his people, the other Mandalorians. And, I love when they came and helped him during that whole battle.
Yep.
And then I guess at the end when he goes back, are we supposed to think they're all dead?
I think they fled.
They just left their armor?
Yeah, I thought the idea was that the armor was the only one who was really left.
The armor, okay. Because there was, like, that big pile of all the armor on the ground, and you're like, oh, why would you take all that off? But it's just kind of like, he started, I feel like, I don't know, to care more about putting his life into a different direction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of gets swept up in a cause. It's a very small cause. It's like protecting this child, right? but before then, he's got like the way, right? But he doesn't really have like a cause. I mean, I guess he's trying to like, return the Beskar to like his adoptive people basically, and
Right.
Be one of them and be part of that, community, right?
He wants to support the foundlings.
Trust.
Exactly. But
He's
so I guess like
people now.
trusting people, yeah, exactly. Working with people, like in episode 4, at the end of episode 4, he's like, "Hey, you could come with me,"
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what? Really? Like, you putting together a team?
Yeah.
Like...
And like when he knows he's going to need Kara towards the end, like he, makes sure he gets her.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he does put together a team with Kara and with Queel and the Dewbacks and all the
Right.
rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. Which,
But you're right.
I just want to keep calling him Lando. It's so confusing.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wonder, how do they all communicate with each other? Because, like, they only call him Mando because he's a Mandalorian. And, like, so if you meet 2 Mandalorians, what do you do? Like, Mando 1, Mando 2? Like, someone's got to have a name at some point.
Mando.
What was his name?
Doctor.
His name's
Hotman.
Djarin? Din Djarin?
Din Djarin is his name.
Din Djarin.
But yeah, I don't even know who uses it. Like, he says that the fact that the Moff knows it must mean he is this particular Moff. So it seems like this is not a name he goes by. This is like, he knew my name from 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he's gonna have something to do with like his parents getting killed. I mean, don't they always? That's my prediction.
Always.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
I think as we talk about this, we keep sort of being on the edge of talking about our theories, and that's probably a big part of, even talking about the characters. So let's start with that. Let's just start with the Mandalorians. Like, what did we learn this season, and what are kind of your thoughts on what we may learn or how this all fits next year for the Mandalorians themselves for this coming season? Like, I'm both a little frustrated, but also really fascinated by the world they're giving us for the Mandalorians, especially because the Mandalorians have been very well developed, especially by the Clone Wars and the Star Wars Rebels TV show.
Yeah.
But the way those shows ended and where the Mandalorians are today are very different. In those, they take their masks off all the time. People see them without their helmets. And we never have reference to this thing they call the Great Purge.
Right.
And so do you think that this is like a part of Mandalore that we just haven't seen before? Has the way started entirely in the last like 15 years since the Purge? What's your kind of take on where we're going to go with that?
I have no idea. I'll just get that out of the way.
Well, I
No,
think
actually.
I'll try. I think them showing that dark lightsaber at the end, that was what that used to be like Mandalorians or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much, like, I don't know. But I think, like, that's fascinating. And, like, the weapons he's getting now, like, him and his jetpack just, like, destroyed that TIE fighter.
Yeah.
I don't know. With that coming out, we're going to get to see, like, well, where the hell did that come from? Who had that? What made you guys start, like, the way? Did you guys have, like, a rogue Jedi dark side Mando in there somewhere that we need to find out about? And, like, is that what you guys, like, finally used to reel your stuff in?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
The universe has always had problem with time jumps, and it's my one frustration, and I really hope they better address it, because, like, by the canon that we already have from the TV shows, it's established that as of 15 years before what we're seeing, the Mandalorians were still an existing culture. The Mandalorians knew all about the Jedi and hated the Jedi and saw the Jedi as their enemy, but maybe sometimes team up with the Jedi against the Empire. And that the black saber was this thing that, the Mandalorians had as this weapon because they stole it from they defeated the Jedi at one point and got this weapon as their prize. So the fact that Mando has never even heard of the Jedi felt really weird to me.
Right. Well, because it's like, how old is he?
Right. And, like, he's raised by a people who have, like, so much of their world is dedicated to being against the Jedi.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's some major thing that has happened in between everything else and where the Mandalorian is now. And it can make sense if they explain it. I just really want them to, like, I want this season us to get more into what is the way and how did this all become? Because it's fascinating. It doesn't really fit with what we have for the Mandalorians before now.
Yeah. I didn't think about it that way.
I'm skeptical that it'll make sense if they explain it. I just want to express that.
Okay, Debbie Downer.
It's not quite a lost season 4 or 5 feeling, but where I was like, this is definitely not going to make any sense once they explain it. But in terms of the time, like, I think what they will be able to do is come up with an explanation that will make sense from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
but if you like really, try to like square it with some of the earlier things, I think so. Like 15 years. You're saying like that's between. I mean, that would be between the Clone Wars and or between Revenge of the Sith and.
I mean, to give no spoilers away, but we do visit like. The situation on Mandalore is referenced and gone into during the show Star Wars Rebels.
Okay.
And Star Wars Rebels happens about 5 to 3 years before
A New Hope.
Before A New Hope.
Yeah.
And I believe it's supposed to be about this is taking place about 10 years after New Hope, because it's about 4 years after the Battle of Endor. So
Right.
10 to 20 years probably, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so why wouldn't you know about the Jedi? I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, all of these things that take place in space, right? I feel like there's a certain amount of physics that should be invoked in terms of, like, relativity, and people experience time differently depending on how fast they're going. People are traveling at light speed. I don't know. I feel like somewhere in there's a more science fiction-y kind of explanation, maybe. Really, what they should have done is they just should have stuck Luke and Leia in an ice bubble for 50 years, 100 years, and then the whole thing would have worked out better.
Yeah.
Or actually carbonite freezing, right? Just throw Padme in some carbonite and have her in there for like 40, 50 years, and then she comes out, the twins come out, and then, she dies from hibernation sickness or whatever.
Sure.
And
whatever made more sense.
Exactly.
That way no one's putting together the incredibly obvious pieces that Anakin became Darth Vader, because it's so much longer, he must have died out by now. I mean...
Right, exactly. It's like, well, there was this really powerful Jedi who was a little suspect, and
so here's my theory, and I don't know, you're right, they may not explain it at all, but this is the way I think they could kind of like square the circle, or whatever the hell the phrase is. If there is something of like, there's a difference between like the Mandalorian people who live on Mandalore, who also follow this idea, and then kind of the Mandalorian diaspora. And and this is something that does happen, like people who are far away from the home country often honor the ways of the home country far more than anyone else, because they aren't just on Mandalore. And in some religions there's more rules about it and things like that. And so I could kind of see if maybe like the way is for Mandalorians who are not on Mandalore, and so that's why it's like kind of stricter and that we haven't seen it explored much.
I like that.
It's a way they could do it. Yeah, that's currently my theory that I'm working on, and that part of what happened is now Mandalore itself got wiped out, and so now all there is the diaspora.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, so you're gonna send them that note and make sure that
I'm just hanging my hook on it that maybe that's the thing that's gonna happen in season 2 or season 5. You're right.
Right. Yeah.
No.
What's your take on Baby Yoda, and like where's he coming from, and what are they gonna do with him?
I just, like, he's already done more Jedi tricks than most of the Jedis in all movies put together. Like, he's done all of them. And I'm really excited about it. But if he's not a Jedi, is he going to be that thing that we were kind of talking about during Return of the Jedi talk? Like, that middle kind of creature where you're not dark side, you're not a Jedi, you just get to live in this middle space and have all the powers?
Well, so we were talking recently on the Clone Wars episode, actually the one that will go up just a day before this episode does, that the Clone Wars establishes that, like, the Jedi isn't the whole of the light side, and the Sith aren't the whole of the dark side. And I think he certainly exists in some kind of, like, outside of that thing. I mean, he's certainly not a Jedi by any means. He can form attachments. No one's like telling him
Right.
not to.
Yeah. Raised by a bounty hunter.
He can force heal and force choke you at the same time.
Don't kink shame,
Yeah.
I didn't say there was anything wrong with it.
Oh, there we just lost our child audience. I may edit that moment out. But yeah, I what I'm really interested in is where he comes from. I think that we never knew anything about the origins of Yoda. I think we always sort of thought of Dagobah as his home planet, but it could just be where he went to camp out.
And I don't think it is. But...
And I think we saw another Yoda-like creature in the Phantom Menace who was pink and had kind of like a similar ear structure. But even then, it was never known, is this Yoda? Is this someone else like Yoda? I'm up to learning almost anything about that character. I think my only thought is, and granted, this is my own point of view, not everyone will agree, I really dislike the idea that everything, especially about the Force, has to be about, you're part of a certain, bloodline. And so I will be very happy if this is some long-lost member of the race that Yoda belonged to. If this is actually Yoda's child or, Yoda's DNA somehow or cloned, I'm going to be so mad. Just don't give us that story again.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, this kid's 50, right?
Right.
So, what kind of a parent was Yoda? If, you know what I mean?
Everybody's got their baggage, man.
Well, I mean, 50 years ago, Yoda was already an old man. So I think if it's a connection to Yoda, it would be Yoda's great-grandchild or something like that, probably. But,
right.
I'll accept a fifth cousin.
Yeah.
Sure.
Give it some time, yeah. But I don't want it to be, and especially...
Right. Yoda's baby or grandkid or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's we've done that. Just give us a new character.
And this to me ties into one of the things I'm most excited about, just A, because it's awesome, but also because of this storyline. We're getting Ahsoka, the character from the Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah. Rosario
Dawson's playing her, yep. Night Nurse is coming to Star Wars.
Woo!
I think she's one of the best characters introduced in the Clone Wars TV show. If you've only seen the movies, you've probably never seen her, except that in the climactic scene of Rise of Skywalker, when all the former Jedi are talking to Rey, she's one of the voices you hear.
Oh, yeah.
But she was Anakin's Padawan. And the only reason I'm particularly excited for her to come in this regard is... to this date, we have no character has both seen baby Yoda and also knew actual Yoda. And presumably she's going to meet the child. So I figured that has to be the moment where she's like, oh, right. He's the same race as this, phenomenally powerful Jedi Master who used to be, helping to run everything.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, she should have some level of insight.
Right.
As opposed to most people who are like, what is that thing?
Right. And I was...
That's a good point.
I was wondering if maybe that's how we're going to bring her in that, this season ends with... it's funny because the armorer says, take this child back to its people. But she doesn't mean, small, green, pointy-eared people. She means the Jedi. And
does she? She says that?
I thought so, because... Mando says at the very end, so I'm supposed to take it back to this race of, enemy sorcerers. And she kind of is like, well, maybe they're not our enemy anymore. And maybe... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think they're both, fairly ignorant as to what it would mean to bring that child back to its people. And they don't seem to know a lot about Jedi. And they definitely don't seem to not know a lot about, Yoda's species.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a little bit more of an open question. It's figure it out, bring them back to their people. But
right. My only point being that I think for Ahsoka to be added at the time that Mando is going off to look for the Jedi, I don't think that's at all coincidental. And
I totally agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe she finds him because she knows he's on this search, or maybe he finds her. Not to give any spoilers for Clone Wars, but I guess it will be pretty relevant for people watching Mando. She does not leave the Jedi on good terms, and she has very mixed feelings about the Jedi by the time they're all destroyed. So that I think will also be an interesting thing to see how they play that out.
And I think it's an interesting question, like, what's she up to in the era of the New Republic? Like,
yeah,
you know, because she kind of wasn't so down with the Old Republic, you know, before it became the Empire, even. So, you know, she was kind of like, nah. And, you know, partially, and obviously what you said about the Jedi. And so, I mean, I haven't finished Rebels, and I wouldn't really want to spoil it, although I guess her casting in Mandalorian is a spoiler of sorts for Rebels, right?
I mean, maybe she could always be a Force ghost.
Sure.
Oh,
okay,
I'd hate
that's
that.
possible.
Yeah.
I hate that so much.
I don't know who she'd be talking to, but...
Maybe Yoder?
Yeah, who never met her. I don't know. Sure.
Sure.
I think casting announcements are often like the types of spoilers that we just have a very hard time avoiding, right?
Yeah.
And whatever, that's fine. But like,
and I should just say as a quick aside, some people might be thinking, wait, we know a lot of this because we've seen the trailers. I've made a point not to see the trailers because I don't want to be spoiled, and I'm guessing, Paul, you've done the same.
Yeah, what's a trailer?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I watched all of them.
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter for me.
Okay.
I thought that What's-Her-Face was in the trailer, and then I had to go back after everyone was like, no, that wasn't her. But who am I talking about? You guys don't know.
That's hilarious. So, yes, any other theories you all have about Ahsoka and how she's going to fit into all this?
I think she's going to be badass. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I need. I hope that Taika does her episode, and that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guaranteed to be badass. And I think, you know, your theory makes sense that she will certainly have something to do. I don't think it's like Mando's going to be like, oh, here's the child. Like, you're a Jedi.
No.
He's a Jedi. Like, you know, but I do think that she, as a character, will shed a lot of light on that.
Yeah.
Oh, I just had a thought. They are going to need her because What's-His-Face has that other lightsaber. So who's going to fight him?
Yeah.
Only someone with
Moff
a
Gideon.
lightsaber.
Moff Gideon.
Little lightsaber
Yeah.
battle. Oh,
So
that
maybe
would be...
she'll team up to help him because I want to see that so bad.
Yeah. Well, and,
More lightsaber.
and so actually, that's the other great thing to have some theories on. What does the Empire want with this baby, and who is Moff Gideon, and what's he up to?
Right, and like, when do they become like the seeds of the First Order, or like, how does that work? Like, are we going to see Palpatine's life support crew at some point? Like,
God, I hope so.
Yeah, like I think that we won't. I hope the show doesn't turn into like, here's the founding of the New Order, but I would certainly like to see parts of it. And I think if we eventually discover that at the end of this whole chain of command that Moff Gideon and then the client were a part of, that Snoke is somewhere at the end of it, I would not be sad about that. I think that could be an interesting, like, that someone pulling the strings to get the child and whatever they want from the child is connected to Snoke. I think could be an interesting, like, transition towards the New Order.
that seems to me like a good season 5 reveal type thing.
Again with the season 5.
Yeah.
I bet they were trying to like find that thing while it was small and impressionable, because imagine having an evil Yoda on your side that you farmed up and like is your buddy, you know, looks up to you like a father figure or whatever.
Yeah.
And you have this badass dark side Yoda.
They did say a couple times that that the child being dead is an acceptable outcome as well.
Right.
And so my thought is kind of that they have 3 levels of, but also that they would want maybe material from the child's body.
Yeah, like extract the midi-chlorians or whatever.
I really.
Or you don't want it to fall into the Jedi's hands, because it'd be better to them dead instead of being what, you know, inevitably could turn into another Yoda, which was one of the most powerful forces against them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like their worst case scenario is, you know.
Yeah, he's like, we like him alive, but if we kill him, that's okay.
Right.
Right.
And to some extent, I mean, this is one of the interesting things about a show like this that's set in the middle of an established timeline. There's some things that we know have to happen. You know, we do know that Baby Yoda doesn't wind up being able to be a big part of the rebellion, because we we didn't see it, or the New Republic or whatever it is.
Right.
We know that, but at the same time, well, I guess I was going to say that we don't know that the Empire eventually gets the material, but maybe they do, and maybe that's what creates Snoke.
Oh.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, that could
maybe he is Snoke.
Oh.
Oh, God.
It's not. That's definitely the worst theory.
Yeah.
Which one? Aren't there several?
Especially if 50 years of life, you basically get to the point of about like 6 months of development. The idea that in another 4 to 5 years he's going to be like I think we're gonna have to accept that Baby Yoda is always going to be a baby. If he like becomes like an 8-year-old equivalent, like that's just not going to make any sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's not 6 months. He's like a toddler, right? I mean, he toddles.
Yeah, I guess more like 2 years or so.
And he's like in the egg or the crib or whatever. I think it's like a crib. It's like he sleeps there, but then he toddles and gets into trouble and stuff.
Gets people out of trouble.
Almost crashes the ship. Almost kills the girl.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I heard you guys got frogs. Let me get some of those frogs.
Mm-hmm. That's why I liked. I think what was it, the second episode with the Jawas, when they sent them to go find the egg in the hidden Butthole Mountain or whatever that was supposed to be.
Yeah.
When you I didn't expect. I guess I should have. I guess I was a little naive, but I didn't expect him to be able to be that powerful already, and pick up that monster and body slam it or whatever he did.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because I think we've kind of established no, never mind. We do actually learn. Most of the Jedi discover their powers very early on, so forget that part, except Luke for whatever reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
We've been going on this for almost an hour or so, and I did want to make sure this didn't go too long. But any other kind of last theories or ideas that people wanted to drop in, or things that you're hoping for or expecting in Season 2?
I'm just really looking forward to going over this with you guys. I love this. Yeah. It's fun.
No, this is super fun. I'm really looking
learning
forward to
a lot.
having you on some of these podcasts and getting listener feedback. Listener feedback is what this is all about. So for listeners, definitely be sending us your theories and stuff. Paul, any of the last stuff you're hoping for or looking forward to?
Well, now I just want to see Ahsoka like in a lightsaber battle against like the Darksaber or whatever.
Yeah,
me too.
Come off.
Well, especially because I want the Mandalorian to kind of be watching, and maybe someone who knows more about the Darksaber as, two people who are both not Mandalorian fight over this thing, and he's like, wait, no, that's ours.
Right. Well, I mean, I would think Ahsoka wasn't like, hey, give me that. I think it would be more of a confrontation of, Gideon being like, oh, give me that little baby Yoda, and she's like, nah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I'm going to be very careful not to spoil anything, but just in the most general terms, the saber is seen as a sign of leadership. It's kind of a Mandalorian Excalibur. If you have it,
cool.
You're kind of a ruler in Mandalore, and so I can see that they're being a very specific. We need to get that back, and Ahsoka knows all that.
Right.
So, I mean, in many ways, Ahsoka could be kind of a walking exposition machine.
I
don't want her to go too far into that, but it not even to tell the audience, but that she can connect the dots for our main characters. Because she was there during the Siege of Mandalore. She knows, in some ways, she probably knows a lot more about Mandalore than he does. But from a very different perspective. So.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I think it's going to be a great season. For you, the fans, we'd love to hear your theories. Please be in contact with us. You can find us in a number of different ways. The best way is to go to strandedpanda.com and then click on our icon. It's the two microphones crossed like lightsabers with the Star Wars Rebellion sign behind it. You can also just search for Star Wars Universe Podcast on any of the places, on Facebook, on Twitter, places like that. All the links to our social media are there, and you can also always email us, StarWarsUniversePodcast@gmail. As I said, we're going to do episodes about every episode that's coming out. Many of those are going to drop on Friday night, right after the episode, or maybe early Saturday morning, depending on how crazy my editing schedule is. I love having more voices.
I might be able to help.
That'd be great. Editing a 4-way discussion is so much fun.
Okay.
But we'll do that. As I said, we're also going to be doing the watch parties. And you can find all those. Those will be on. There's a link that's going to be. I'll put up on the Star Wars Universe Podcast Facebook, and also on the Stranded Panda network and other places like that. But we do those every Friday night, always at 7:30 Central until the show ends. Two other quick things you can also do to really help us get more people in. If you're already a fan of this podcast or the Star Wars Universe podcast, one of the best things you can do for us right now is go to iTunes or go to anywhere else that you leave reviews for podcasts and leave us a review. In the next couple of days, a whole bunch of people are going to be typing Mandalorian into the search bar, and the more reviews our podcast has, more positive reviews especially, the higher it's going to go in the search rankings. The more people find this podcast, selfishly, that helps me a lot because it helps grow the network and generate more income and generate more listenership. But also it just makes the podcast better. It gives us more people to get feedback from, more people to join in the discussions, all those great things. So if you like this podcast, if you're excited about this podcast, the Star Wars Universe, please go to any of those, iTunes especially, search for Star Wars Universe Podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. Tell us what you love about the show. Tell other people what you love about the show. It's a huge way to help. And the other thing is just tell your friends. You're probably going to be having water cooler conversations with people in cyber water coolers as much as we can about Mandalorian. Send them links to the episodes. Get them talking about it. Help us grow the network. It's a huge benefit to us, and it just makes all these conversations so much better. So thank you guys all so much for doing that. Ashley and Paul, thank you so much. Each of you is also creating your own content in different places, and I want to give you a chance to talk about that. Ashley, you want to go first because you actually just dropped your own first a podcast episode that you completely conceived, thought of, and recorded and did all the editing for.
Yeah, right here on. Are we doing this on PandaVision?
Yep, this is going on
this
on
episode. Yep, right here on PandaVision. A friend director of mine, we did a deep dive into Sam Raimi's film career. Made a very Halloween-y episode out in the woods. A lot of crickets, and it was a lot of fun. So to get ready. For Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I wanted to take like a really deep look into like all the different movies and how he started with Bruce Campbell, and we pretty much cover his entire career.
That's awesome. That sounds
fun.
I'm a huge Bruce Campbell fan, primarily because of the character of Sam Axe in Burn Notice, but he's been great in other things. What'd you say, Paul?
The chin.
Yeah, exactly, the chin.
If chins could talk.
If chins, for sure. And I'll also say, Ashley has been a frequent guest on my own podcasts, on a number of the other podcasts. She was a big part of our review of The Boys. She jumped into a couple Lovecraft Country episodes. I think you and I did a whole Lovecraft Country episode ourselves, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was very much the cats are away and the mice will play kind of thing. We had fun.
We had a lot of fun that week.
Definitely. But so Paul, what about you? What are you up to these days creatively?
I'm doing some streaming and video making and stuff. I'm Zen Madman on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and thegoodold.com. That's it. And I just wanted to kind of, with a thought of how does Baby Yoda eliminate waste? Like, we never see Mando changing diapers or anything like that. It's just, I don't know.
Season 2 doesn't cover that.
You can't unthink it.
I'm out.
And here's the thing. I would normally be like, look, that's a topic the whole universe just decides not to talk about. Except in the very first episode, a major plot point was the person who Mando had captured saying he has to go evacuate, use the bathroom. So we've established that, different races' use of excrement is an important part of this universe. So that's I don't quite want to see the changing diaper scene, but that is an interesting part of his character.
I want to hear about it. I want some expository dialogue about it,
I second Paul.
Yeah.
They better explain it.
Ahsoka just should tease him about it, in some way. Just something to bring it up. So, and Jeff Randall, who can't be on this podcast right now, he has just moved. He doesn't have internet yet. But he would be very upset if I didn't say that we also do want to see Cara Dune come back in some way or another. Because as he would tell us, Cara Dune is Bae. That is almost his watchword. So we've honored him. We've honored all these things. Thank you all so much for being great listeners. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Please go vote. This is coming out just a week before the election. Please make sure you have a plan to vote and plan to vote safely. And write in, share this podcast with others, write us a review, and have a great day.
I have spoken.
This is the way.